Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Planning and Development Board. For those who don't know, we're not anticipating any evacuations or fire tests, anything like that. So if you do hear the alarm, it's likely to be a real event. So please leave the building by the nearest safety exit, which is likely to be that door. If for any reason we can't use that door, it is the main entrance to the civic street where everyone enters the building this evening. Please go to Assembly Point B, which is in the car park just outside those windows, and stay there until tonight's proper officer says it's safe to do otherwise. As you know, when you enter the building, we have a register of everyone here, which we are required to give to the fire brigade so that they search for people and make sure everyone's safe. So if you just go home, there is a list that the firemen will risk their lives trying to find you in the building when you put your feet to them and be enjoying a cup of tea. Are there any, well, in fact, I know there were apologies for absence. So Councillor Watson, Councillor Bell, Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Jens, Councillor Dervix are all away. Councillor Cleves is substituting for Councillor Bell. Councillor Wright is substituting for Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Davey for Councillor Jens, and Councillor Phillips for Councillor Phillips. But there's a missing Councillor Phillips.
He wasn't told he was suing.
Well, then we'll enter his apology.
He's busy bricklaying, doing his house up. So he wasn't intending to come along anyway. So somebody's got
permission for that.
Someone's messed up. He hasn't got planning permission for it yet.
Churchill was a bricklayer.
Sorry?
Churchill was a bricklayer.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Members, are you happy that we note those apologies and substitutions?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any interests that they would like to declare? Thank you. The minutes of the board held on the 8th June are in your papers. Are you happy that I signed them as a true and accurate record? Thank you very much. The first item that we have is for the Coleshill School, Typically Road, Coleshill. Anyone else has indicated you'd like to speak? If you take the speaker's chair whilst Erica introduces the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair members. The application proposal seeks the comprehensive redevelopment of Coleshill School. It seeks permission for the construction of a new 3-storey school building, a new sports block, replacement sports facility including a multi-use games area, revised car parking and revised access arrangements. And it would be for the phased demolition of the existing school, whilst allowing the school to remain operational throughout the construction period. So the site extends to approximately 7.75 hectares, and it comprises the existing school campus, which is located between Coventry Road and Paddington Lane on the southern edge of Coleshill. So the existing school buildings occupy the northern part of the site, with playing fields and sports facilities to the south. The site adjoins residential development to the west, Woodlands Primary School to the north, and open countryside to the south and to the east. The existing buildings are in a poor condition, and the Department for Education's review has identified concerns regarding health and safety, building performance, and suitability for modern education requirements. So it has therefore been included within the government's schools rebuilding programme. The proposal would replace almost all of the existing school buildings and the purpose-built teaching block positioned to the south of the current buildings. Once completed, the existing buildings would then be demolished and the site restored and reconfigured. A separate sports building would be constructed adjacent to the existing leisure centre. Pupil capacity would remain unchanged at 1,350 students and would include sixth form provision. And staffing levels would also remain broadly unchanged. The new school building would be predominantly 2 and 3 stories in height and incorporate modern sustainable design measures to include extensive roof-mounted solar panels, all electric heating and lighting systems. The sports block would also incorporate renewable energy measures. In terms of transport and access, the existing site access points would be retained, but they would be improved. The scheme would provide for enhanced bus facilities, increasing the capacity from approximately 4 or 5 buses up to 8 buses, aimed at reducing queuing on Coventry Road. Car parking would increase modestly from 105 spaces to 117. With electric vehicle charging points, cycle parking and improved pedestrian links. The submitted transport statement concludes that the proposal would not increase traffic generation because school numbers would remain unchanged, but the redesigned layout would improve existing traffic management arrangements. The secure point of entry would be closer to Coventry Road so that all vehicles would be parked in authorised parking areas. And then with regard to drainage and flood risk, the site is wholly within flood zone 1, and new sustainable drainage measures are proposed. So that would include the underground attenuation tanks, permeable paving, swales and infiltration features. The applicant concludes that the development can be accommodated without increasing the flood risk elsewhere. An ecological appraisal has identified that the site has generally low ecological value, but with the most important habitats located at the site's boundaries. No priority habitats, protected species or veteran trees are identified. Additional landscaping, tree planting, rain gardens, swales and biodiversity enhancements are also proposed. And whilst biodiversity net gain is not currently achieved within the application boundary, offsite mitigation within the wider school holding is proposed, and that will be assessed as part of the determination process. So with this application, that the key planning issue is that the proposed school would be located within the Greenbelt and outside of the Coleshill settlement boundary. The applicant argued that the site should be considered to be Greybelt land, and that the proposal should not therefore be regarded as inappropriate development. But alternatively, if the applicant contends that if the local authority didn't regard it to be Greybelt, then the development ought to be found as appropriate because of various special circumstances, which they argue would clearly outweigh the Greenbelt harm. So these circumstances include the government-funded rebuilding programme, the need to maintain educational provision during the construction, the site constraints, and the operational requirements of the school. So at this stage, officers have not reached a final recommendation, and a full determination report will be presented to members following consultation, responses and further assessment. However, officers have highlighted roughly 4 principal matters that will require further consideration. So the first being whether the proposed development has sufficient future-proofed accommodation to meet potential future growth in school places. The second being the relationship between proposed new sports facilities and the Borough Council's own leisure centre, including opportunities for wider community use. The third being whether the proposed travel plan can realistically deliver improvements to parking and congestion issues in the surrounding area. And then lastly, the impact of the scale and the massing of the building on neighbouring residential amenity, particularly in terms of overlooking and visual dominance. The members are asked to note the report and are advised that a site visit will be arranged in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Alves, welcome to the Borough Council. My colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Thank you. Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll start the clock when you start speaking. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you've got 1 minute outstanding.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Cathy Ellis, Climate Planning Managing Director and agent for the application. Just here today to introduce myself and really talk over the basics of the application. As Erica has set out to you, this is a school replacement that is funded directly by grant funding through the Department for Education. This is a direct replacement, not an expansion. So we're looking at the 1,350 capacity. We're retaining the Wilson building on site, which has a capacity of 350 pupils. So the new building has to have a capacity of 1,000. And that's what the design is intended to provide. We have identified the location on the site plan for the new school building. We acknowledge that this is within part of the green belt, but this has been chosen so that we can maintain education facilities on site and so that we can deliver enhanced facilities to the level that the Education Authority requires. We believe that there is a case to be made here in terms of the need for this school and the need to maintain education on site. It also means that we meet the timescales and we meet funding requirements. In terms of the Greenbelt assessment that the council's done itself, this area of Greenbelt has been identified as grey belts. So that follows the argument that the National Planning Policy Guidance allows for development of infrastructure that's needed on grey belt locations. We hope that the council agrees with us and supports this location. In terms of the new school building itself, the design, as Erica set out, incorporates new energies built to educational standards and also provides for future expansion possibilities. We haven't been able to set that out through this application because the funding is very tight and is very restricted that we can only replace what is there. But we have had to future-proof the possibilities of expansion. So that is fully taken account of in this design. In terms of the travel plan, it is very much like every other travel plan that is, accounted for in major developments. Staff will be able to be encouraged to use sustainable means, and there will be a new parking policy for pupils and staff in terms of visiting the sites that will be able to be policed by the school. In terms of scale and massing, we are in discussion with Erica on the impacts and the material treatment, and we hope that those all can be alleviated in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it would be helpful to the board if you could just talk us through a little bit further about how you're going to future-proof and build in the potential for increases. The board has had unhappy experiences with 2 other schools in the borough where we've been assured that future-proofing is there. It's been anything but there.
If we could show the site layout, is there a way to zoom it in anymore?
Not easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So to the north of the main school building there, that's right there, we have put forward draft proposals, or rather schematics, for how a new wing could extend north of that building. So therefore provide additional capacity. And that again is at 3 stories, so would provide a sizable level of capacity if the need were there. We haven't looked at expanding to the south because that is protected in terms of the sports facilities and the playing fields.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to say that sounds exactly like the answer we were given on previous applications, that it's as a possibility for development, but I don't think that's future proofing.
We have designed it, but we can't present it. So there is a full design in that respect.
And what levels of population growth and change have you accounted for in that design?
Well, I think that extension that we propose is a third of the existing building, so that would be 300 pupils.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure I'll have many more questions once the site visit is completed. One thing that does concern me is the travel plan, trying to encourage cycling, which obviously I am all for. One thing that does concern me, that lane is incredibly dangerous, and I do think that it needs to be looked at in your travel plan for children and adults cycling down that lane, because I don't think it's safe. To encourage more people to cycle, I think that's something that needs to be looked at.
So one thing that we've explored through this application is really looked into how pupils and staff are visiting the site at present. And I'd say probably 80% of pupils arrive by coach and buses. So because of the rural nature of the areas around Coleshill and also the amount of pupils that come in from Solihull, it is a large majority by coaches. So in terms of trying to increase sustainable transport, knowing that, you know, we're looking at rural lanes beyond Coleshill, we don't think that actually cycling for the majority of pupils is going to be a solution. Instead, we're making the bus services that are provided much better and encouraging staff to consider alternative means or car sharing. Because I know that some of the staff live quite distant and therefore cycling isn't feasible. What this proposal does do is that we do replace and increase all of the cycle parking and make provision for staff showers so that those that can use the cycles will have all of the facilities to do that.
Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Chair. I know this has been brought up by an officer and also about our chairman, but QE is in my ward. I was actually at the first planning meeting and we asked the same question, future-proof, future expansion. We was promised it all. And since then we've had porta cabin after porta cabin after porta cabin. 2 years ago, the funding was there to do a new build. At this minute in time, there's not a spade been put in the ground. So again, we just hoping that it will work this time, because cabins are not good for our children to be educated in.
I agree with that completely, and that's why we are looking at this proposal in front of us instead of decanting teaching into porta cabins for months and months. So this is why this scheme is before you. I can go back to the Department of Education and see if I can get further clarification of the amount of work that's gone into future proofing. So provide that in writing to you. But in terms of future expansions of the school, that will be led by the need. And obviously, if future development comes along that puts that pressure there, then that in turn has to fund the expansion. What we can do is indicate the designs that would allow for that, so that you have some comfort. I think that would be something that we can release in draft for you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hayfield.
Thank you. I've got 3 points that have been touched on already. First thing though, it is funding for a new school in Coleshill has to be welcome. That's first and foremost. On to the concerns. Sorry, I'm doing this in the wrong order because I need to wait. She's still doing.
Yeah. Questions.
Yeah, it is. Sorry.
Well, presumably when there's a new scheme, you'll be able to go back and refresh your.
I've made notes, Chair, so I won't forget.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. It's been mentioned about site visit. That could be very welcomed, I have to say. And I know officers have talked about there's a few things you need to have further discussions on, but it'd be interesting to know whether we can have a site visit during the school holidays or from September onwards. We'll wait for that. Good evening and welcome. I noted that you mentioned about buses or spaces 4 from 5 to 8. I think the one thing that, and it's probably something that you can't deal with, but I'm looking maybe to highways, etc., because I'm sure, like Colin and a number of other people, like myself, that live in Coleshill, when they're trying to get in or out when the school, particularly when the school is leaving, then you'll find straight away, probably from about 2:30, there are heaps of cars parking outside, ready. They've marked their spot on the parking on the pavements, but it causes so many problems for people, particularly the buses, the X13, who come along to pick up pupils going into the central Coleshill and beyond. That is an issue that I still have. It's almost, how could we try and potentially nip that in the bud to try and relieve this, even with the new school coming up. I can see residents saying, great opportunity to have a new school, but we've still got that major problem right outside on the Coventry Road, and somebody did mention it, and in particular on Paddington Lane, because that is another area where we have so many problems of people getting in and out of the lane, particularly with the other school as well, with St Edwards, etc. But yeah, that is one thing that still concerns me a bit of how that could possibly, Chair, be looked at and handled. So we nip that in the bud, and at the same time as a new build, get some sort of organisation of parking outside, and particularly for those buses. Thank you.
I think the travel plan presents an opportunity to educate staff, but also parents, where it's in patients care, in terms of the complexities and the difficulties that cars parked along the entrance road and the access do have the Coleshill residents, but also in terms of the traffic movements at the school. That is something that the school has tried to work with previously, and it's hoped that through this new proposal that we can really make it good in terms of influence. Obviously, policing the site parking is going to be much better in terms of the access points, having a proper gated entrance, so there'll be none of the we've arrived late, we'll just park on the verge sort of thing, which happens now. So definitely in terms of visitors, staff, sixth formers, that we better police completely, so that will remove that area of frustration. I think we have to work with the highway authority in terms of dealing with this existing issue and try and address it as best we can within the means that we have as part of this proposal.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphries?
Is this a shovel-ready project in the sense that you're ready to go? Because I can remember the QE and I also remember Hartshill. There was still several years afterwards, and I know there was a bit of playing about with the position of the school up at Hartshill. So does it require public consultation, or is it you got permission in October? Are you digging you're digging the ground in November?
We have done public consultation before the application was submitted with local residents, and we've done 2 rounds of pre-application consultation with the planning authority. First one back in 2025, one with myself this year. So we've gone through rounds of consultation. We believe we're ready. The only issue that we found with the site is that while we were doing investigations, the drainage and such, we did find that there was a sewer where it shouldn't be. So currently we are delayed by about a month and a half in terms of our timeline because of the dealings with the water authority about the replacement of the sewer. But other than that, get the permission, discharge the conditions, prepare the sites. We're on go early next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ells. I'd just say in passing, we are about to go to Regulation 18 draft of a new borough plan. So if I could encourage you to liaise with our full planning team, because then that may or may not include new development proposals within the school council area.
Thank you. I will look at those. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
What it stays in my memory, yes. 3 issues. I'm alarmed at the greater The lots of proposed housing developments around Colsall, and at the LDF, the officers was giving me the impression they still regard that as being green belt rather than grey belt. Now, I think this application will succeed, whether it's considered green belt or grey belt. I think there are overriding reasons why it might end up being supported. But I would be concerned setting a precedent for Colsall area if this was designated as grey belt. So that's my first. We've touched on the potential, notwithstanding the green belt bit for housing sites, that there could be quite a lot more housing around Colsall. Hundreds, in fact, that will have a knock-on effect on people. It'll be incremental over the years as permissions are granted and housing is taken up. But at the moment, my recollection is about 40% of the pupils come across the boundary. Wooders, children wooders. And if there's more population from within Colsall, then that boundary to fill up the school will contract. Now, I have to say, because I'm a Warwickshire County councillor, that I'm not terribly fussed about the Wooders, but I am fussed about the Shustokes and Maxstokes and Whittakers that currently fall within the catchment area that might be excluded from the catchment area if the pressures on places contracts that orbit. So the third one I want is car parking. It's been met. Packington Lane is terrible at the moment. We're talking, and that's often staff members that attend special school there and the Catholic school along there. Packington Lane is a nightmare, and if 90% of the staff are driving to the school, really got to increase the capacity of the car parking within the site so that people who are working in the school can park within the school environment and don't try parking all over Packington Lane, because that would just exacerbate an already very difficult situation. Bicycles are great fun and always a nice idea, except that if you are a wooder living the other side of the A446, it will make travelling to school incredibly dangerous. Buses work pretty well around the school at the moment, but I mean there are the odd inconsiderate car parkers that make the buses difficult. But I would be looking to get as much additional parking as possible. And I do take some reassurance in terms of numbers, because building it, the typical government thing, will grant you like for like. You've got this many pupils, we'll have a new school for this many pupils. Completely ignoring the fact that with the experience you mentioned Atherstone and elsewhere, is that becomes woefully inadequate after a few years. So even if I take some reassurance that even if you're not going to make it bigger, that you're planning expansion into the plan so that in due course it could be made bigger. So I think those are my immediate areas of concern. Thank you.
Any other comments, members? Councillor Humphries?
I've taken up the point of Councillor Hayfield. When you deal with the Packington Road schools, you've got St Edwards, and then you've also, unfortunately, you've got the Woodland School. And while I was still a county councillor, I was dealing with Woodland School on quite a long-term basis. There were 221 pupils at the Woodland School and 162 staff. They managed to get an arrangement where they were using the football club and then busing people up from the football club. But if you're familiar with Packington Lane, the football club and the school is quite a long walk, especially in inclement weather. So there is no space for, and I worry about the future, coming back to increasing the school by a third in the future. That would bring a third more vehicles in as well in terms of staff. So I think we've got to be very, very aware of it when we do the site visit. Thank you.
Councillor Parsons?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I welcome the expenditure and the plans that we see here. And that is something that is needed in so many schools in the county, in North Warwickshire. And yes, we do have to be concerned about school buildings being able to cope with what's coming. But of course, one thing that schools don't get is funding for redundant rooms. They don't get it. You know, schools are funded on the basis of the pupils, basically, and the pupil numbers. You can't build and then expect, you know, vacant sites not to affect the school's budget. You have to build within the budget and within the capacity. That's unfortunate. At least here there is scope for developments. We're told that there is a development plan which can't be revealed here. But in that sense, it's not really fair to ask for buildings which aren't going to be occupied to be provided on the basis of they might be occupied one day, because that's not how schools work. And actually, if you do that, you're saddling with a financial burden which they cannot afford. I think we have to be aware of how schools are funded, and that's something that you know is very. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to put this question to Councillor Fowler, if that's okay. Obviously, it's your ward, and I just wondered, oh, is it your ward? Sorry, apologies.
You can answer.
I thought it was better. How long have you been in this council? Apologies. I was up very late for a certain reason last night, so you have to forgive me. Haven't had enough caffeine yet. I was just interested in basically whether you've seen any consultation or whether there has been any plans locally from residents, or is it just waiting for this to start that ball rolling? I don't know if you're aware of anything really.
Town council was certainly involved in the
Okay.
consultation.
And have we got any feedback from there, or that'd be quite useful to know if we could, just what residents feel, because I always feel that that's where you start. Thank you.
So members, are you happy to note the report, and are there any other items other than the ones identified by the officers in that report that you'd like to follow up on? Councillor Baker.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask one quick question? And I just noticed that on the transport assessment, data was from 2018, well, that's 8 years ago. We've had COVID and all sorts of since then. So my concerns would be, I know that they said that they were going to look at whether it is zero, so if they start putting pupils in, they're going to start looking at it again. But I would just write more comfort really for everybody if they looked at it before the pupils were there, because obviously the travel data from 2018, the world's changed. Going forward, it would be nice to be properly prepared.
Ms Levy?
Yeah, we haven't as yet had the consultation response from the Housing Authority, and the up-to-dateness of the data relied upon will be a matter that they will scrutinise.
Deja vu. Councillor Fowler.
Just one of this I asked earlier on. We're looking at potential site visits. Are we looking at going to have a look during the school holidays or from September onwards? I'm looking at you. I think it might be from September onwards.
I'm looking at Catherine for a lead.
I mean, really, we can arrange it as soon as possible.
Can't speak.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
We need something, if we try and,
Members,
Arrange.
I will liaise with officers and contact you regarding the site visit.
yeah, Chair.
Councillor Hayfield.
Just on that, Chair, what a fantastious time I'd have thought for members to get a view of the current school and the likely impact of all this. During school hours, it's leaving time and arrival time, something, so you can actually witness the current problems with parking and things. When you find you can't park anyhow to attend the planning. See, if you just want to see the layout of the site, then great. When it's an empty school and it's all quiet, then fine. If you want to know what the impact's going to be like, then you want to see the school in action as it is at the moment.
Chair, can I just very quickly support what Councillor Hayfield is, and he's spot on, because that is the best time to actually see it, is that when the pupils are there and then we're there as they leave, so you get an idea of Packington Lane and the Coventry Road. So Councillor Hayfield is spot on with that. Thank you.
Some members, to move us on, I will move the supporters note. Seconded, can I see all those in favour? Thank you very much, that's unanimous. The next application is number 547 for 36 Keys Hill, Battersea End. Kieran Porter has indicated he wishes to speak to us on Teams, so Mr. Fulford, if you stand by, while our officer introduces us to the report. Mr. Collins.
Thank you. This application seeks planning permission for the change of use of 36 Keys Hill from a dwelling house to a children's residential care home, which is use class C2 for up to 3 children, together with a single storey side and rear extension. The side extension is shown on this plan here, and the rear extension here. The location, as members will be aware from previously, is next to the chip shop on Keys Hill, and it is a semi-detached property. The application was deferred from the planning board to allow further information to be submitted regarding the operation of the home, staffing arrangements, parking provision, traffic generation, and potential noise impacts. Additional information was subsequently being provided, including a statement of purpose, parking management statement, and a noise management plan. Further consultation has been undertaken with environmental health, which has concluded that there's insufficient evidence to demonstrate that the proposal would lead to an acceptable noise impact subject to the implementation of appropriate management measures. Warwickshire County Council of Highways has maintained its position of no objection and confirms that there's adequate on-site parking provided to serve the development. As you'll see from the agenda, there's been a number of objections received raising concerns regarding noise, disturbance, antisocial behaviour, staffing levels, visitor numbers, parking demand, etc. These concerns have carefully been considered. However, officers consider that the planning decisions must be based on demonstrable planning impacts and evidence regarding the future occupants. As you will see, as the recommendation, there are a number of conditions proposed that would ameliorate and reduce the impact on the surrounding neighbouring properties. Accordingly, it's considered that the proposal does accord with the local plan, and approval is therefore recommended, subject to those conditions controlling occupancy, parking, operational management and noise mitigation as set out on the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Mr. Porter, welcome back to the meeting. My colleague will explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll start the clock when you start speaking, and I'll remind you at the 2 minute mark.
Thank you. My name is Kieran Porter, and I'm here to support the application to change the use of 36 Keys Hill from a C3 dwelling to a C2 residential children's home. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the concerns raised by local residents. We understand that any change within a residential community can create uncertainty, and we have listened carefully to the feedback received. The 2 principal concerns following the last review have been around parking and potential noise or disturbance. In response, we've already amended our operational model. Staff shift times have been staggered to minimise vehicle movements. Staff will be provided with clear parking guidance to ensure that neighbouring properties are not obstructed, and shift handovers will take place inside the property rather than outside, which is typically the norm. In addition, we have developed a good neighbour and noise management policy, setting out clear expectations for staff, visitors and young people. The home will be professionally managed 24 hours a day, and we are committed to maintaining an open relationship with neighbours so that any concerns can be addressed quickly and responsibly. I would also ask members to consider why this home is needed. Warwickshire County Council's own children's care sufficiency strategy for 2025 to 2028 identifies a legal duty to ensure that there are sufficient homes for children in care and recognises the continuing need to develop appropriate local residential provision. Across Warwickshire and neighbouring authorities, there is increasing pressure on residential placements. Children with emotional and behavioural difficulties, learning disabilities, and complex needs are too often placed many miles from families, schools, and communities because suitable local homes simply do not exist. Warwickshire has previously acknowledged the need for more local placements to enable children to remain closer to their support networks and reduce disruption to education and healthcare. Our proposal directly supports those objectives. This is not a large institution, it's a small family-style home for up to 3 children, providing a safe and stable therapeutic environment. Smaller homes are increasingly recognised and are being more appropriate for children with complex needs because they allow more personalised care, greater stability, and stronger relationships. Current sufficiency strategies also highlight demand for smaller specialist homes, particularly for children with learning disabilities and those requiring therapeutic support. Our vision is to provide more than simply accommodation. Every member of the staff team will be trained in trauma-informed practice, positive behaviour support and attachment-based approaches so that everyday experiences become opportunities for learning, development and emotional growth. Ultimately, there are children who, through no fault of their own, cannot live with their families, and they deserve the opportunity to live in an ordinary home within an ordinary community where they can build relationships, attend schools where appropriate, and have the same old opportunities as any other child. This application represents an opportunity to North Warwickshire to help meet a recognised local and regional need where providing a professionally managed home that will integrate positively within the community. I respectfully ask the committee to support this application. Thank you.
Any questions, last speaker? There are no questions. Members, before we move into the discussion, we've been asked by the 2 neighbours, both of whom can't be with us this evening because they're away, if we would consider deferring this item so that they have the opportunity to come and speak to you. I think that's a reasonable request. And given that, I'd like to propose deferment until the next meeting, so we can hear from the objectors as well as the. So it's been seconded. So are we? Does anybody else wish to speak on that first? In which case,
Can I just ask? Are we sure that the neighbours, as it were, can be here at the next meeting because we can't go on deferring indefinitely? So,
fair question. I believe they can.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
The other thing I'd like to do is I think we had an informal site visit last time. The local members have asked if we can have a formally constituted site visit. So along with deferral, I propose that we have a site visit where we all attend the site in association with our officers. Councillor White.
So it would be, would be better viewed if it's been between 4:30 and 5 o'clock and up top.
Thank you. So members, are you happy for us to defer on a range of site visit? All those in favour? Any against? Thank you very much. That's carried. And again, we'll be in touch with you regarding the arrangements for site visit. The next application is number 338 for Drayton Court for Green Answer. We have no speakers on this one, but you will be aware from your papers that this application is before you simply by virtue of its ownership by the Borough Council. Do you have anything to add to your report, Mr.
I will introduce. So the application is the creation of a new accessible entrance to Flat 9. Proposal involves the replacement of part of the existing ground floor lounge window with a new entrance door and the construction of an access ramp to provide step-free access for the current occupant who is a wheelchair user. As Councillor Simpson has advised, the application is before you because the Borough Council is the owner of the property, and that accords with the scheme of delegation. And the works are relatively modest in scale, replacing part of an existing window, formation of a room, which would lead to the existing. And the principle of improving accessibility to public dwelling is supported by local planning policy by the NPM, which seeks to create inclusive and accessible places and promote health and well-being. A similar proposal elsewhere within Drayton Court was approved last year. In terms of design, the alterations are sympathetic, and although visible in the public realm, the proposal is not considered to create harm to the character of the building being by the street scene. And officers are satisfied that the development would result in any significant impact on neighbouring occupiers and overlooking or loss of light or overshadowing, or indeed any other impact on residential amenity. The proposal would meet the council's public sector equality duty and would be a positive benefit of the scheme. No objections have been received from neighbours or from the parish council, and the recommendation before you is to grant subject to conditions. Thank you.
Councillor Waffles and Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask, I mean, obviously, in principle, I don't have an issue with this, but I just wanted to go through the process in my head and sort of publicly. If we grant permission for this as landlords, what happens about the funding side of it? Because obviously, if we're giving the green light now, and obviously if there's an issue with funding, just trying to get that in my head, just so that we're not.
The funding would be the subject matter for a different board. So I'm presuming that would go to Resources Board as the owner, if you will, of the property.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case, but I just wanted to sort of say it publicly, so it doesn't mean that if we agree tonight, that's it, definitely it's been agreed. But
well,
permission's agreed, but not the.
All we're doing is planning consent, everything else is a different board.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to set a precedent for everybody to just all of a sudden flock us, and then we have a hefty bill. Potentially, if there's lots of people asking for accessibility in our properties, and then all of a sudden we've got the resource issue. I mean, I know it's
yeah,
a bit
have to,
but I'm just kind of thinking, hey,
The applicant is the Borough Council.
right, thank you very much.
Councillor.
Yes, as a planning committee, the money is no problem. Somebody else.
Well, yeah.
Can I do the recommendation, please, Chair? It seems fairly straightforward.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Thank you very much. Lots of seconders. So all those in favour of granting consent? Any against? Thank you very much. That's carried. Next application is for application number 495, land to the south of 158 Hurley Common. Mr. Foster and Councillor Gibbon have indicated they'd like to speak, so gentlemen, if you take the speaker's chair whilst our officer introduces the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application seeks retrospective planning permission for the change of use of land to the south of 158 Hurley Common to a residential gypsy and traveller site, comprising 2 pitches, together with associated hard-standing access improvements and 2 amenity buildings. The site itself lies within Greenbelt and was formerly a small woodland parcel. It's currently occupied and an enforcement notice has already been issued requiring the cessation of the use and restoration of the land. Members are therefore required to consider whether planning permission should nevertheless be granted on its planning merits. The principal issues for consideration are principle of development in Greenbelt, landscape, ecological impacts, highway safety, residential amenity, the need for traveller accommodation and the personal circumstances of the occupiers. Firstly, in terms of Greenbelt policy, the site has been assessed against the current national planning policy framework. Officers conclude that the land falls within the category of grey belt and makes only limited contribution to the relevant greenbelt purposes. Furthermore, recent appeal decisions have confirmed that the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable traveller sites, and as a result, there's an identified unmet need for additional pitches within the borough. The site occupies a location that is considered to be sustainable when assessed in the round. Whilst outside of a defined settlement boundary, it has access to local services and a continuous footpath connection to Hurley and nearby bus services linking to the surrounding settlements. The development would provide a settled base for 2 traveller households and contribute towards meeting identified accommodation needs. The application does, however, result in significant harm. Before the unauthorised development took place, the site consisted of lowland mix of deciduous woodland. The clearance of that woodland has resulted in the loss of habitat and has adversely affected both biodiversity and character of the area. The site has changed from a natural, verdant and undeveloped landscape to a more urbanised residential environment. You can see from the plans in front of you that shows the layout that is proposed in terms of that, with the amenity buildings and the hard standing. Officers consider that the impact on the character has significant weight, that harm. Nevertheless, conditions are proposed requiring landscaping, biodiversity enhancement measures, off-site ecological compensation and improved ground treatment. While these measures cannot fully replace the lost woodland, they are capable of partially mitigating the impacts identified. You'll see from the agenda that no objections have been raised by either Highway Authority or Environmental Health subject to conditions related to access improvements, visibility displays, drainage and lighting. Officers are also satisfied that the development would not result in an unacceptable harm to neighbouring residential amenity. Finally, substantial weight is attached to the personal circumstances of the occupiers, including the presence of children, health considerations, and recognised needs of the gypsy and traveller community. Having regard to the balanced harms and benefits, officers conclude that the adverse impacts do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposal. And that is the decision-making process. It has to be that they do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The recommendation is therefore that members approve the application subject to the conditions as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, welcome to the council house. Mr. Bosser, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's 30 years and you all look the same.
Just for the sake of good order, my colleague will now again explain rules on public engagement.
Good evening.
Thank you.
3 minutes to speak. That will be divided between the 2 of you. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you're.
I presume you are not deferring it. We were told you might be deferring a decision.
The board hasn't decided that yet. They may.
So okay, in that case, I will continue with my submission to you.
Look, I think generally, yes, I am going to propose deferment based upon certain elements of the report. But as you're here, we'd very much like to hear what you have to speak to say.
Okay, right. In that case, my name is Richard Prosser. I live at Waste Farm on Hurley Common, and I've lived there as an MOD Ministry of Waste Farm tenant since 1964. I speak on behalf of the residents of Hurley Common, particularly the Finnemore and Loft families who live in the cottages immediately to the north of this site and also own the
orchard and garden immediately to the south of the site that abuts onto the site. And I speak on their behalf and we wish to make a formal objection to this application. The local plan does not identify any form of development on Heady Common. The only exceptions being extensions, house extensions up to the third, or in the case of the White Hart, replacement of a dangerous building due to mining subsidence. This is an illegal development, trying to acquire planning permission retrospectively and is totally inappropriate for this area. I make the following points. As you've already heard, the county ecologist opposes the development due to the illegal destruction of woodland and wildlife. Sewage, the road pipe is already at capacity and under extreme storm conditions overflowing. There's also been some discharge from the site by illegal pipes running onto the neighbouring land. Highway access. Immediately north of the proposed entrance is the row of the old cottages we've talked about, known as the fields. They have no off-road parking, so their vehicles have to park on the roadside adjacent near to the proposed entrance. There are already more caravans and buildings on the site than proposed, and their vehicles are often parked on the road, further obstructing the road. Commercial timber lorries seem to go in on a fairly regular basis. I have seen many applications for development on Heady
1 minute
Common
remaining.
over many years. The plots adjacent to the Anchor, the coal yard and the plot on Turnmill all have been refused. I will now hand over to councillor Given to make his comment.
Okay, I'll jump straight in. The parish council has spent a great deal of time reviewing the planning applications within the parish. The now common tactic for travellers is to illegally occupy the site, decimate the established ecosystems, and then submit retrospective applications. There must be a level playing field ensuring all applications are looked upon equally. However, with such blatant disregard for the proper process, it's not possible for the parish council to support this retrospective application, as approval sets a dangerous precedent within our small village. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Gibbon, top marks for getting all that done in less than a minute.
I could have blown it out there.
Members, do you have any questions for our speaker?
Do you have much social behaviour at present with the current site, illegal site that is there now?
Noise and very noisy dogs that are going to jump at the fence as people walk their dogs up and down.
Councillor Waffle?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, you talked about some spilling of sewage.
Yeah.
Is there any evidence of that we could have? You know, is
Well,
there
we can get
not
them.
for tonight, but
No, obviously.
yeah,
No, the neighbour, because it's been going on to the neighbour's property.
yeah.
Yeah.
If we go on
So
to
I'll ask them if
the-
they've got photo on.
Thank you.
Thank you both for mentioning it. Members, you're sort of aware now from what I said earlier on, but I have significant misgivings here, which I think we need more information on. As you read in the report, we are constrained in what we can do by the NPPF and particularly the government's influencing of Graver. Central to all of that strikes me as the issue of sustainability. And I think it's important that we thoroughly understand how sustainability works and what is required and what we can and cannot do. So at this point, members, I think we need more information to be able to determine the application. So I'd like to propose that we defer consideration of this for a legal report explaining more about. I mean, we know what the NPF says. We more or less know what graveyard is. But everything I understand is sustainability is key. The report talks about sustainability and about how sustainability can be achieved within this site. But I just feel that we need more on that. Councillor, please, then.
Thank you, Chair. It's kind of a question really for officers. 8.32, in line with the analysis set out with biodiversity in the scheme, assessment is preliminary ecology approval and was confirmed by Warwickshire County Council ecologists that the site previously comprised lowland mixed deciduous woodland that was considered to make clear and positive contribution to the appearance of both the immediate locality. And then we go on to 8.40. Formerly the site was characterised by a lowland mixed deciduous woodland which has been cleared to facilitate the development as identified by Warwickshire County Council. Given the presence of this habitat, it is reasonable to conclude that the site previously provided nesting opportunities for birds, potential roosting habitat for bats, with mature trees, suitable foraging, sheltered habitats for species such as badgers and hedgehogs. 8.41. The removal of this woodland therefore represents a loss of habitat at the local level, resulting in harm to biodiversity and diminishes the site's ecological value. 8.42. It is now mandatory under the Section 7A of the Town and Country Planning Act, as inserted in Section 14 of the Environmental Act 2021. Under the statutory framework, every grant of planning permission, unless exempt, is deemed to have granted as subject to the condition that the biodiversity gain objective is met. What I'm asking is, as our officers made this exempt for them to pass it to planning?
I don't think so. What they said is it can be achieved by adding conditions to any grant of consent, but Mr.
That's what
Parker?
we're saying, it's exempt.
No.
No,
It applies, but conditions can.
it does apply. At point 8.43, it does make a point now in terms of retrospective applications, where there's a need to provide some biodiversity net gain improvements, but it isn't as much if it is retrospective.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Phillips?
I'm sorry, obviously. Yes, Chair, I'd like to ask for a site visit, Chair. I think that, I mean, this permission is for two dwelling caravans, but I think there's already more caravans on there at the moment than that. And as for the, this site used to be an allotment and an orchard, and yeah, I mean you'll never get that back. But the destruction that has taken place there, it will never be achieved to get that back. Whatever shrubs are planted are never going to replace the mature trees and the shrubbery that's been ripped out. But I'd like to request a site visit, Chair, so we could look at the site and see what it consists of.
Oh, yeah, it's very reasonable, and we'll include that in the proposal.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Parsons?
Thank you, Chair. I support everything that you have said, Chair, but I have to voice a concern, and that is, I mean, I know that the process to reach enforcement action is a fairly exhaustive process, and one that we take seriously and look at. And the apparent ease with which we are moving from the enforcement action to approving or recommendation that says we should approve this is very concerning, I believe, and I think we do need to look at this very carefully. So I absolutely endorse the idea of a site visit. I understand the pressures that we're under in terms of providing places for travellers, but as I say, I feel in this particular situation that there are some very real concerns that we need to look at very carefully. Thank you, Chair.
And hopefully the report that we're going to get can address some of those issues.
Thank you, Chair. I second the site visit, but for those that don't live in that ward and don't see what it was like Councillor Phillips said, I think it would be a good idea if we could get a Google image of how it was before. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may, if you did a site visit, there's another piece of land adjacent to that, which obviously this was part of. It was part of, like as I said, an allotment and an orchard and things, and flowers and that. It's really nice. And it's been allowed to sort of mature over the years, so you'll get an idea of what that part of the land was like if you look at the land next to it.
Some members, it's been proposed and seconded that we defer for a further legal report and for a site visit. I see those in favour. Thank you, that's unanimous, I think. Gentlemen, we'll be in touch with you regarding the date when this will come back before the board. And you are more than welcome to come back and have another attempt at persuading the board and sharing the time equally. But you're very welcome to come back. All join us on Teams if that's more convenient.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We now move to application number 299 for 48 VZ Close, Walter Orton. Vanessa Scott has indicated she'd like to speak to us on Teams. So, Ms. Scott, if you could stand by while our officers introduce the reports.
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks to vary condition 2 of Planning Permission PAP 2025-0181 to regularise amendments made during construction of a single-storey rear extension. The extension has been built with an increased overall height of 3.2 metres compared to the approved 2.86 metres, together with the addition of a roof light, a side door, so with a roof light and a side door, which wasn't shown on the approved plans. The site is a ground floor most net property within the Walter Orton development boundary. The key issue for consideration is whether the 34 centimetres in height results in unacceptable planning harm when compared with the approved scheme. Officers consider that the increase is modest and does not materially alter the extension's overall scale, character, or appearance. The development remains subordinate to the host building, complies with the council's household design guidance, and respects the 45-degree rule in relation to neighbouring properties. Objections have raised concerns regarding overlooking, overshadowing, loss of outlook, and inaccuracies with the submitted plans. While officers conclude that the additional height and side door are acceptable, the roof light is considered unacceptable because it allows direct views into the upper masonette property and conflicts with local planning policy LP29 relating to residential amenity. On balance, the proposal is considered acceptable, subject to conditions, including the removal of the roof light within 3 months. Approval is therefore recommended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Scott, welcome to the meeting. My colleagues will explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll start the clock when you start speaking, and I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you've got 2 minutes standing. You can start whenever you want. She needs to unmute.
You're there you go.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to the chair and members of the committee for allowing me to speak this evening. I would like to point out that I was not aware of the original planning application, nor I nor the tenant received any notification. Had I been aware of the proposal, I would have submitted objections at that stage. I wish to make it clear that I do not object to my neighbour having an extension in principle. My objection is the fact that the extension has been built, that the extension that's been built is not the extension that was approved. The most important issue is that the development has been constructed significantly higher than the approved plans. I understand that the planning officer's report that the extension has exceeded 34 centimetres higher than the original permitted. The approved plans form the basis on which the planning permission was granted. An addition can build, if an applicant can build substantially higher than approved and then simply seek retrospective consent, it undermines the confidence in the planning process and the purpose of having approval plans in the first place. In addition, the development includes changes that were not shown on the approved drawings, as Julian has pointed out, the roof light and the door. These changes have increased the scale and visual impact of the extension beyond the original considered acceptable. The increased height and bulk have had a direct impact on my property. The extension appears dominant and overbearing when viewed from my flat and garden. It has reduced the light to my property and increased the sense of enclosure. The side elevation and roof design have now increased concerns regarding overlooking and loss of privacy. I would ask the committee to consider whether the development that has not been built in accordance with the proposed plans should now be rewarded with retrospective approval, particularly where the changes have had a greater impact on neighbouring properties than originally assessed. For these reasons, I respectfully request that the retrospective planning application be refused. And thank you for your time. But can I just add as well that there's been a catalogue of blatant, just of doing exactly what this applicant wants. And Julian has taken my concerns on board, and I respect that. But there's just a catalogue of things that I know the planning department aren't concerned with, but it just shows perhaps the honesty that this applicant is coming from.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Members,
you.
do you have any questions for our speaker? Councillor Walker.
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for coming tonight. Can I just confirm then, are you a resident or owner of the flat above?
I'm the owner of the flat above.
Okay, so just clarity then, can I just check? So you had no prior knowledge, A, of the application in the first place, and
No.
B, you didn't give permission for them to build onto your flat, which in effect is what's happened.
That's correct.
Just for clarity. Thank you.
I have tried to phone the owner as well. He knows where I live and he has my number, and he's not accepted any calls from me.
When we get to discussion, I just want to find out from a legal point of view what, responsibility people have building on to an elevated person's neighbour's property, because I think that's quite significant in this case. Thank you.
Any other questions for our speaker? There are no further questions, so thank you very much, Mr. Stark.
Thank you.
John, I answer your question, Councillor, because I think we are concerned here regarding planning consent. Ownership are issues that the applicant and his neighbours need to resolve themselves. So we could give plan consent to anybody for doing anything. They still need to go through the normal regulations to make sure that it's legal and reasonable. Anything that's out.
No, we don't look at ownership when granting planning consent.
I think that the point I'm trying to make is if we give consent for an application that is for their property, and what they've clearly done here is built over somebody else's property, surely I'm trying to get in my head, because obviously if we're looking at a horizontal neighbouring issue, it's pretty much clear cut. But when you go into the next elevation, I'm just trying to understand if they've breached her property by 34 centimetres, then technically they've built on her property. So
Yeah, I don't think they have them. They've built above their property.
it's encroaching on hers, that's what I'm trying
Above
to understand.
the median line between the two houses.
So is there any encroachment on the
That's what I'm
neighbour's
trying to
property?
establish.
There isn't any indication that it's 34 centimetres. As you see within your report at paragraphs 8.43 to 8.45, it goes into the land ownership issues that actually correct notice was served as part of the process. And this is a civil matter between the two of them. We're not aware of what that boundary line is and whether there is encroachment. That is not down to the planning authority. That's down to, unfortunately, solicitors to try and deal with.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was just trying to get it in my head whether there was another breach of law which could
So-
you know,
so-
help us understand what's going
Yeah.
on here.
Unfortunately, so that party wall acts and land ownership matters aren't material planning considerations, so we can't give a great deal of weight to that matter in the application. However, the amenity and the impacts to the upstairs masonette have been taken into great consideration with this application. And that's one of the reasons why we've recommended to remove a roof light that's currently on the roof pitch, because that's got the ability to maybe cause an overlooking issue.
No, I just want to get some clarity here. This, as I understand it, is an extension. The encroachment, does it relate to the ground or is it air rights?
I suppose the wording would be air rights or.
So the air rights belong to the owner of the ground, not to the
More of
neighbour.
a property law matter, unfortunately. I'm not too sure.
Am I right in my belief that it's air rights and they belong to the landowner, not to the neighbour?
It depends on the lease and the covenants within it, so that would be separate to planning.
Fine. Okay, so the answer is really, it's a personal issue for the parties to resolve between themselves, I'm afraid. Councillor Hayfield.
I think for me, a lot of this comes down to proportionality, really. In theory, everyone should build within their planning consent and not exceed it or restriction. But it's a foot higher, significantly higher. But an awful lot of things we consider an awful lot higher than that. Is a foot higher suddenly make it dominant, no vary? I wouldn't think so. I mean, I understand from years of neighbourhood disputes and things coming towards us at planning applications, people don't like to look out of their window and see something different to what was there before. It's unsettling, it's uncomfortable, makes sense. But I think there have been concessions made by these applicants. We're going to acquire a further concession in terms of roof lights through the conditions. I think, on balance, I'd support this, and therefore I'd move the recommendation.
Councillor.
And thank you, Chair. I'm just checking that we're only asking for the roof light to be removed and put back as good.
That's correct.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Parsons.
I'd like to second councillor Hayfield's proposal.
Councillor Humphries.
I'd like to propose to build it to within spec, because if I lived upstairs and wanted to put an air conditioning unit and drill a hole in my wall to have an air conditioning unit, am I going to be entering its kitchen? I think if he built it to spec, there would be no argument. So I'm proposing an alternative. That he actually built it to the drawings. It might only be a foot, but he's built something that is not permissible and trying to get away with it. Thank you.
So you're proposing that consent is refused?
Yes.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you. Just two questions I have in my mind. The first one is, had you received the application as built, would you propose consent be granted? If you like, I'm trying to understand, looking at what is here now. The board regularly has applications for retrospective applications. Would this have met with a recommendation of approval or refusal?
Yeah, so this is just a variation to an existing planning permission that was granted in 2025. Appreciate there's been some comments made about some potential misletters with consultation. However, from our end of things, letters were sent, and on that application, no comments were received. Therefore, it was approved under delegated powers in that instance. And this application's come in following the identification of a height discrepancy, and this application's looking to regularise that.
To get that.
But as it stands, if the application came in as what you've got in front of you, that's how the report reads. If it was as shown in front of you, we would be recommending approval to it.
Thank you. And secondly, there is in here the a condition requiring removal of the roof light. Is that what the way we normally go, or is there a need for enforcement to ensure that happens?
The way that this is probably one for you. But so, although it's not detailed on the current plans, it was assessed as part of the report. It's been decided that because there's a clear separation between the upstairs and the downstairs units, and there could be an overlooking issue between the two parties of those units, while the principle of the 30 centimetre plus addition is acceptable, the roof light should be removed. So that's why we're proposing a condition. Then in terms of enforceability, if that's not removed within the legal recommending 3 months from the date of the decision, then enforcement can follow up on that.
Okay, so those who proposed it, my instinct is it would be an awful lot simpler rather than having a further report to the board if we included the opportunity for enforcement within the recommendation. That's what we always used to. So rather than simply a condition, the opportunity is granted to commence enforcement if the work isn't. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just for clarification, right? If the lady on top wished to extend there and build on top of that, then that foot difference would make an awful lot of difference to her extension, wouldn't it? I mean, it would be relevant then, wouldn't it? I mean, you wouldn't be able to get it back if she decided to take advantage of the fact that there's a wall there and she could build on it.
Can you just show us on the pump? Because as I understand it, this is a piece of the ground.
Yeah, this is the garden area.
And
I think
so if the objector wished to extend, she'd be building on top of her.
Yeah, masonettes don't sort of act like this. I think it's usually the ground floor masonette that has the garden area. So the objector would not have a right to build above that land because it wouldn't be theirs, I believe. Even on stilts or sort of coming out to the side. All the garden area here is in the ownership of the ground floor flat.
But again, that's all going to be determined by the deeds or the lease agreement as to what rights each party has.
Yes.
But ordinarily with a masonette, the upper masonette extends upwards, and the ground floor masonette extends outwards.
So I suppose that what the masonette above could do would maybe put dormers in or something, but that wouldn't extend out over where the extension is. That would be in this area here, on this area here, where they put dormers in above the original property. But there's in no way that the extension prejudices that ability for them to carry out those works.
Anything to add from a legal perspective?
Nothing. Chair, can I just ask? You know, I'm not on. What is it? So, where the dormer roof is the lady in question here looking down through the dormer, or is she down here and looking up?
Yeah, would be looking down, well, looking out from that window.
Right. So
the objector would be looking down into that roof light.
Roof.
Yeah, and the owner would be
looking up.
Looking up. Yeah. So it's the perception of that
Right,
looking
so
either
we've
way.
not asked for obscure glass.
The problem with obscure glazing is the perception. It still leads to the perception. With roof lights such as that, people in this sort of weather leave them open, and that still leads to direct overlooking into there, or light pollution. And you can't really say that those need to be fixed as well.
Okay.
You can, in some instances, say that those roof lights can be fixed, but those usually on side elevations, not on the top. It was the same thought process we had as officers when we were assessing it.
Thank you.
Did you ask the builder of the extension why he didn't conform to what he applied for?
Yeah, so they had the opportunity to revert back to the original permission or to submit a variation. And that's what the application's looking at, and what they've tried to do to regularise the development. That's what.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask if that's what your proposal is, that as part of the original application, that you'll add in that condition that
Councillor Hayfield? Question for you. You proposed consent be granted.
it's going to be granted, but as
As
part of
as
the
printed, and one of the
proposal.
conditions in that printing was that the roof line should be replaced.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
asking.
my question
understanding is that will,
enforcement.
if the consent is granted, that is what will be required.
Okay, so we have two proposals. One that consent is granted in line with the recommendation in front of you. The second that consent is refused. Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Watson, I need to ask you what the reason for refusal is.
It's spoiling the amenity of the person.
So it's neighbours amenity. Yeah. Anything else or just?
No,
It's
just
perfectly reasonable.
just that she's mentioned about the light as well, so I don't know if there's been an impact on the light. The light that a light impact study. I don't know.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Close?
Yeah, Chair, I think one of the main points that we should be looking at, and I can understand both sides, is if this keeps happening, where do we get to stop? You know, we could have another house built with 4 bricks higher than what it is. If we keep saying, well, that's okay if you do A, but you must remove B, where do we stop, Chair?
So look, this comes in, into the generality that it's not a criminal offence to undertake development without the benefit of planning consent. It is not a criminal offence or any breach of law to develop beyond what planning consent has granted. The role of the board is to determine, is that extension, the overage, if you will, appropriate, and would you have granted consent for that? And in fact, now, are you happy to grant consent for it? The officers have written a detailed report, and their conclusion is that it is reasonable. But that's entirely down to members to determine if you feel it is reasonable. So bear in mind that we have an application here where consent has been granted for the extension. There's nothing you can do about that. All you're being asked to opine on and grant consent for is the overage that was built. Councillor.
Yeah, just could I say to you, I mean, we're being asked to judge the application in front of us.
Yeah.
We're not being asked to judge what might be going on down the road or what might happen next year or whatever. This is what's in front of us, and that's what we've got to judge, basically. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor.
We're setting precedent
For what?
for, as councillor Clue says, if we agree to this, is what's the point in having rules? If the rules say, if it was agreed in the first place that the height of the building was going to be a certain height and he's gone over that height, then
I think it's hardly a precedent. We've done it dozens of times to my knowledge. And it's perfectly, there's nothing which says it's illegal to get it wrong or to do more. It may be unpalatable, but it's not illegal. Mr. Collins, anything to add on that?
Only 2 points. One, each application should be dealt with on its merits. So that's what we're at. It's not a precedent. We're looking at each one on its merits. And if, just in terms of recommendations, the point was made about enforcement action. So if you do agree with the officer recommendation, the point about enforcement action is instigated. If there's non-compliance with the planning condition, would be advisable to put that on as well. And that is it.
So, to the proposal and second, are you happy to include the comment on enforcement within your recommendation? Anything to add from a legal perspective? Have we misunderstood anything? No. Members, any other comments, or shall we go to a vote? So I have 2 proposals in front of me. One, that consent is refused because of our policy on neighbours' amenity and the impact on the neighbour. Can I see all those in favour of refusing planning consent? Those again. No. Consent is not refused. Can I see those in favour of granting consent as recommended in the papers in front of you with the addition of enforcement action? Those against? 1, 2. So consent is granted with the addition of enforcement. We now move to application number 349 and 350 for Green Farm Main Road Baxley. Members, I should explain to you that this report is in front of you at my request, and it's a very simple reason for that. Mr. Chambers was formerly a member of the authority and formerly a member of the planning board. It's normal, in my view, for that to warrant a public determination of the application. It's not intended to be any comment on the application, merely a procedural issue. Officers, anything to add to your report?
I've got nothing further to add than the report that's in front of you.
Councillor Hayfield?
Consent be granted.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor, anybody else wish to speak? In which case it's been proposed and seconded for approval. I see those in favour. And that's granted. Thank you. The final application is number 320 for land to the rear of Ralph Kingsbury. Not a planning consent as such, but an issue dealing with the 106 agreement. Dr. Ramirez has indicated that to speak. If you would take the speaker's chair, while Mr. Collins will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report relates to the application 2025-0320 for the land to the rear of Ralph Crescent Kingsbury, which seeks outline planning permission for up to 283 dwellings together with public access. The board previously resolved to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a section 106 agreement and further consideration of the affordable housing provisions specifically. And the purpose of this report is to seek agreement of the heads of terms relating to that section 106 agreement, in particular preferred affordable housing approach. As the proposal is in Greenbelt, the golden rules require the 50% affordable housing, which equates up to 142 dwellings. Members are asked to consider 2 affordable housing options, Scheme A and Scheme B, that is in front of you. Officers would recommend it Scheme A, which provides a balanced mix of social rent, affordable rent and discounted market housing. Specifically would deliver 57 social rented homes, 14 affordable rented homes and 71 discounted market homes. Would address wider range of housing needs across Kingsbury and North Warwickshire. Scheme B consists entirely of discounted market housing, which could be, as you've seen there, the Scheme B provides 10% discounted market housing, which would be 70% of the open market value, and the rest of those 90% would have a 20% discount. You'll hear from the applicant in terms of their preference of those schemes. Scheme B is their preference. In terms of Scheme A, it does, if no one can be found as a social landlord for that first affordable housing split, then it would then go through a cascade approach to all of it being discounted market units. So if there is not a demand for that affordable housing split in the first scheme, then it would go to Scheme B anyway. In terms of the other provisions, the report considers the other Section 106 contributions. That includes nearly £2 million towards leisure, sport and open space, 1.33 million towards educational provision, nearly just over 600,000 towards bus service improvements, funding of public rights of way, road safety initiatives, library enhancements, together with the open space provision on the site. And lastly, that 50% affordable housing requirement here. Accordingly, the recommendation before members is to approve the proposed heads of terms and endorse affordable housing scheme A as the preferred option. You could take a different view to that, but that the recommendation is therefore approval subject to that scheme A approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marinis. Welcome back to the Council House. It will be a surprise for you to hear that my colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker, and I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Good evening, members. For those who haven't met me before, I'm Daniel Ramirez. I'm the planning manager at Gladman. As members will be aware, at the March meeting of this board, the resolution was to grant planning permission subject to the completion of section 106 and the report to come back to board considering the contents of that agreement. Since the resolution was passed, the applicants and Gladman have engaged proactively with the council with a view to agreeing a position that secures the best outcome for the council whilst ensuring that the scheme remains viable, deliverable and capable of promptly contributing towards the council's 5-year housing land supply. I'd like to thank members and officers for their time and their helpful inputs in getting the application to this stage. As set out in the report, the proposed Section 106 agreement secures 50% affordable housing consistent with the original planning resolution and in line with the NPPF golden rules. The officer report then sets out 2 options for affordable housing tenure mix for consideration by members today. As Mr. Collinson said, Gladman give their strong support for option B. Under option B, 50% of the properties, equating to 142 homes, would be delivered as discount market homes, which tend to be very popular with young professionals, young families, and those starting out who are unable to secure a mortgage, who are only able to secure a mortgage at a lower price point. Of these houses, 10% of them would be offered at a 30% discount, and the remainder would be offered at a 20% discount. The legal agreement would also include provision for 50% of the discount market homes to be prioritised for residents within North Warwickshire in line with the council's allocations policy. That'd be for an initial 3-month period. But thereafter, any remaining unsold homes would be made available for those outside the borough. We've had discussions about older persons accommodation, and that recognises the council's desire to provide for these needs. As such, the Section 106 provides for 5% of her homes to be constructed to M42 standards, which is effectively more accessible homes. This will ensure that homes are suitable for older people, those with reduced mobility, and contribute to a more inclusive and balanced community. Gladman has engaged local providers to better understand the market, and discount market housing is considered the most attractive tenure, particularly given the current funding challenges that RPs are experiencing. Discount market housing can be sold directly by a developer, so cutting out the need for an RP entirely, should that be the case. And Gladman are confident that option B would ultimately lead to an accelerated delivery programme, which would in turn the scheme make a greater contribution in a shorter period towards the 5-year land supply position. And would also remove the complexities for a cascade mechanism as well.
3 minutes, or
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Any questions, members? Councillor Hayfield and Councillor Clue.
Should a consent be granted for this for 283 houses? How would that be? How would construction be phased? I mean, would you just go and build 283 houses, or will you build some, see if they sell, build some more, see if they sell, build some more? I mean, how do these things work?
It's a couple of questions in there, I think. First of which is Gladman, we are a land promoter. So we would end up selling the site to a developer, whether that's a local developer, regional developer, or one of the PLCs. The draft conditions have included scope for a phasing plan. So before that, before development commences, the phasing, whether that's in a single phase or across multiple phases, that would be set out. Accompany that phasing plan would be the type of units, including the tenure mix, that would form that particular phase as you sort of move through the development. So at this stage, it's not confirmed whether it's a single phase or a multi-phase development. And that's, as I say, partly because Gladman as a land promoter won't be developing it, and it's about having that flexibility for the ultimate purchaser of the site when they build it out.
Thank you. Councillor Clues?
And thank you, Chair. As the chair of Housing Special Sub, you know, I think A and B are very good, especially for North Warwickshire, especially for Kingsbury. But being as you're only the developer, and at this stage, I think I need more confidence in knowing where we go to the next stage. You know, it does say that Kingsbury should come first, and then North Warwickshire, and then Warwickshire. And then I did see somewhere about registering the council's desire for bungalows. Well, we've had them say before we registered the desire, but we don't get bungalows. And then I think further on in the page, there is something about bungalows. So at this stage, it's just, I still think it's a bit up in the air whether A or B is ideal for us with the developer rather than the people that are actually building it. And I know we're not making that decision tonight, Chair. We're making the decision whether we go with A or B. Thank you.
Again, a couple of questions in there, I think. So the way that the houses will be reserved, whether it's local or whether it's borough or wider, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, I think the council have quite well established wordings for their section 106 to allow for that to happen. I understand most councils, and I'm not sure whether North Warwickshire does, but I expect that they do, is have an allocations policy as well that will set out quite clearly how housing will be allocated to those in need. That can be secured through the section 106. In terms of bungalows, we mentioned about the M42, which gives you greater accessibility homes. We have discussed this on a couple of occasions, and I think a suggestion that came from Andrew as an informative could be on the decision notice for the ultimate buyer to be aware of what the council wants. And it would be for the council then to decide on what those house types are when the reserve matters applications come in, should the outline application be granted.
Thank you. That's a bit more confidence.
Any other questions, members? In which case, thank you very much indeed. Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
On the basis of your knowledge of the market and the informal marketing that you may have done to date, is there anything where you are aware of an RP or a registered social landlord having interest in the site? Is it likely that that would come through quickly or in the longer term?
We have started marketing the site. I don't know whether we've had any offers yet, partly because we don't know what the tenure mix is going to ultimately be, but it will go to the market. We have engaged with registered providers and sort of end developers, if you will, to understand sort of where the hierarchy is of how much demand there is for each tenure. I can't say whether or not when it goes to market what the offers will be and whether A would bring the offers in that we need, or whether we would end up going through the cascade mechanism. What I can tell you is that the advice that we're receiving from our research and our stock market testing, if you will, is that there would be no problem with discount market homes. They would sell very quickly, a very, very popular product.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts, members? American start if you want, but Councillor Jackson.
To the speaker.
No, he's been let loose.
Thank you, Jess. Sorry, interested.
Recognise the importance of starter homes and helping people take their first step onto the property ladder. However, we must also recognise the significant need for generally affordable social rented housing for those who simply cannot afford to buy. Therefore, I do believe that we should go with option A as a balanced approach that delivers both, ensuring that everyone has access to a safe and affordable home. And if that doesn't go, at least then we're giving it renters a chance.
Councillor Parsons?
Yeah, couldn't have put it better myself. I've been aware of discount housing schemes, and they're very good, and they have got people onto the property market very successfully. So yes, I'm in favour of that. However, there are people who cannot raise deposits. There are people who need to rent, and we should at least give option A we should at least start with option A in my belief before if we are forced to move to option B, yes, but there should be scope for affordable rent within this development. It is in green belt. It does have some sort of right to slightly, not exactly privileged, but it needs to be looked at as an unusual development in that sense. And I think that is quite simply something that should be in there, and marks this development out as being a development which gives everybody in Kingsbury and North Warwickshire something to look at. Yeah.
Councillor Hayfield?
I think in an ideal world, I'd probably look for option A as well. We're going to jump on for say this, but I think our track record over the last 10 years or so of delivering social housing, it's not great. If we're looking at deliverability of this, then I think option B offers more opportunities for actually delivering 200 odd houses in Kingsbury. And I mean, I'm sure the terminology is probably wrong, but I remember these as almost like starter homes. The discount enabled them to be a starter home so that people can get the first rung of the housing ladder, find houses like this an attractive opportunity. And frankly, Kingsbury's a nice place to live. It's fairly isolated, it's own community, etc. I think they'll be very desirable, the discounted prices. So I desperately fussed. I say in an ideal world A, but practicality tells me to go to B.
Thank you. Councillor Clue?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I can see both sides. As I say, being chair of the housing, we are in need of houses, but then we've got a lot of young people out there that both work and just can't get on the property ladder because of the price of mortgages and all the rest of it. I would have liked to have seen a bit of A and a bit of B. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just have some legal guidance for which I get confused. Becky. But what I'm missing is how does right to buy apply to RSL RP homes? Is there a right to buy?
There is.
So given in this option B applies in perpetuity, so it's a permanent forever discount. Whereas option A applies only to the extent that right to buy hasn't been.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Humphries?
Fair, I'm sure that in all of the weeks we've had different discussions, we can't find people wanting to work with us, to want to take on these houses. We've ended up losing. In fact, some years ago, we bought 43 houses because a service provider pulled out and we had to buy 43 houses. So the market isn't right out there at the moment for whatever reason. So I think A is the right practicality. Is probably the right way, but B is the practical way at the moment. I see, unless we have a list of people willing to step in and take on 142 houses. Thank you.
If I might come back to it, yeah, I mean, accept all that, but option A does not preclude option B. option A is your starting point, and if that doesn't achieve a buyer, then you go to option B. That's there. And I can't really see a reason for not going with option A first. We know there are people who need rented accommodation. Yes, providers may not be flocking to provide it, but the need is there. And I'm quite sure there is a need in Kingsbury for some people who want to remain in Kingsbury for rented accommodation. I earnestly believe that we should at least start with option A, given that it drops to option B if a provider doesn't appear. I can't see what we've got to lose on this. Thank you.
Perhaps if I can answer that. Well, no, let's have the conversation first. So I don't know who was first. So Councillor Humphries, then Councillor.
I was going to ask, if we go for option A, what does that do to a project in terms of delay? Do we leave it, is it take 12 months to go down that line? Does it slow the whole process down? Do you have to give people, is there an appeal process? I just think it just drags it on and drags it on. I do understand, you know, the need for option A, but I can't see it working with what's happening at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Begley?
Well, I think we should take my words out of the mouth. We've got a housing land supply of probably less than a year. We've got to deliver homes. Yes, we do. Councillor Parsons right. There are people out there. I used to rent out a home for somebody. But I used to have so many more people that wanted it than there are available out there. So I get it. But we need to build homes. There is no two ways about it. So if we're putting in a delay to deliver some homes, some affordable homes, to be able to give families or individuals or starter people or people retiring a home that we're desperately short of in this borough, then we go with B. In a great world, yes, let's look at our rental. But I don't think, and I think there is a real concern out there for our piece. I really do. I don't think the market is that buoyant. So we just need to get our fingers out and get on with it.
And that was where I was coming from. If we go back to why are we considering this at all? A site that wasn't in our plan. We're here because we have less housing supply than we would now. We're granting consents on land that is not proposed in the current plan because we haven't got a 5-year supply. To my mind, on this particular site, because that's the only one we've got in front of us, I'm not making a comment on any other application that we may get in the future. The need for pace and for speed, and therefore, in my view, whichever route to delivery of these houses is quickest, where we need to go. I'm specifically not saying that this will be my view on every site, but we need to have quick delivery of housing. Now, this isn't something that's new. I think that the one that sticks in my mind most was the site at Polesall, where we went with discounted market houses and they all sold to people who lived in the community. There is a demand for these discounted market houses, and frankly, we're looking at a 70% or 80% discount for local people to get onto the property ladder. That's a recognised method of providing affordable houses. It's not something that's just been dumped up. It's dealt with. We have got issues with getting registered social landlords to come to North Warwickshire and deliver. Now, there is a cascade process, but as I understand it, in the papers, option A will be delivered first, and then you're talking about 6 months. But actually, it's not really that, is it? And tell me if I'm getting this wrong, Mr. Collison, but the current applicant would seek to market and sell on. Somebody else would then buy it. Hopefully. So you'd have a situation where that, there are 2 areas of delay: getting someone to buy the site and then getting someone to develop it. And at either point, you'd be looking for someone to consider taking on the social housing as opposed to the open market housing. The applicant told you in his comments earlier on in response to my question that there is no perception of delay in going for option B. Didn't say it, but the implication was there is greater perception of delay on option A. So if we're trying to deliver houses and deliver houses quickly and deliver some houses at a discount of 30% to the market price, option B delivers those houses more quickly, in my view. I'm not saying that this is something that we seek to achieve on every site. This is very much a answer to where we are at the moment. Officer, anything to add?
I hear what you're saying about delay. As you can see in Scheme A, it says about 6 months for no social landlord take up. It can be a lot less than that if you want it to be. It could be 2 months, which wouldn't lead to so much of a delay. So you let Platform, you let Citizen for 2 months, they could have the option, and certainly the housing team could work with the owners of the site, the new owners of the site, who that would be, give them the details, and if they don't want to take them, then that's fine. Then you go to option B anyway. I think 6 months is probably too much. I hear and read what you're saying. The site needs to be developed. We don't want to put things in the way of the owners of the site, and therefore you could reduce it within that legal agreement to a lesser extent.
Well, I hear both sides of the argument, I genuinely do. Is it not possible to have for us to say that we're perfectly happy with A or B, and to see who Gladman can sell to soonest? Because I'm relaxed. You know, my angst is delivery. If we can ensure rapid delivery with A, then I'm perfectly happy with that. But what I don't want to do is wait. Because we've got 2 areas of delay. One is them selling it the site, and secondly, someone else building it. Is it possible to have A or B in the 106 agreement?
It will have a B in, that's the thing, that's what I'm trying to say. If you have A or B, then B, it'll be B every time. If you understand what I mean.
No, I don't understand what you mean. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand, and you can have it in, but there's no point having A in.
Well, in that case, then you push me to saying B. Councillor Waffles first, I think.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to say, let's play devil's advocate. If we put 2 months, how do we know that actually that's happened, that they have gone out to social housing? What proof is that? See what I mean? What proof would there be that they've gone out to all the landlords? If they could just turn and say, oh, after 2 months, sorry, we didn't get anyone, right, let's go for B. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but that would be evidenced by the documentation that the applicant provides to us, which will show that they've marketed it on that basis. So I think, you know, we can be comfortable that there is proof that they would have done it. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that you're being pushed to option B. I'm increasingly being pushed to option A with the 2 month proviso. I don't see that as a huge delay, and still assert the need for rental property is absolutely there, and that is something that is important, particularly in semi-rural settings such as this. So I would like to propose that we go for option A with the 2 month.
And I'm June as a second. What can I say? A second one. Thank you. And from my perspective, I really don't doubt what you're saying. There is a demand, but I think the circumstances we find ourselves in is that we need houses as quickly as possible. That's why I'm preferring B. So, you know, I'm not disputing the need. It's how do we get there soonest. So we proposed and seconded that we express a preference for A. I'd like to propose we provide a preference for B. I would have preferred to, but obviously you won't get.
Could I include the 2 months in option A?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, so I'm saying that.
It's a question for Andrew first. So I know that we're only tonight going on A or B, but can we put any conditions on A or B, like you've just said about the 2 month or the 3 month?
Yeah, that's something that Councillor Parsons just suggested, so 2 months being suggested.
Yeah, and if I can go back to how do we know with other projects like this or other things like this, they do work with the housing team. So again, can we ensure that they work with the housing team so we know that they've not gone just for 2 months?
Angela's fully aware of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I thought she
and
it
has
would be.
tried to engage with the RSLs to ensure that they're aware of the site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my head, you know, I know we've got youngsters out there, but being as I'm chair of the housing subgroup, I'm gonna have to go with.
I'll second you on B. We've had enough of unanimous decisions on this case, but absolutely. Let's have. You vote for it. Yes, absolutely.
Councillor Humphries? We have a modification, just to be a bit older. We have one proposal that says we offer out option A for 2 months, and if it doesn't work, we immediately go to option B, so we don't have to bring it back here.
I think that's essentially what Councillor Parsons has said.
Yes.
Sorry
about that, Dave.
No, I'm sorry. Lots of people don't listen to me.
I was waiting for the canal to come out, but then say.
I never get listened to it.
That's Waffles.
Sorry, to clarify, was it me that seconded, because 2 of us put our hands up?
I don't mind.
I was gonna say, if so, can I add in the part about, if it's okay with Dave, that I add in about, working with the housing department to obtain that information? Thank you.
Okay, so we had option A as the proposal first, so let's take a vote. Those in favour of option A? And those against option A? 7-7, I think. So my casting vote is option A. Oh, sorry, option B. If we need to really work out, but my preference is B, so I vote against the option A as my casting vote. So we now need to take a vote on option B. Can I see those in favour of option B? And those against? Option B, that's it. Is there anything else you need from us on that issue, Mr. Hamilton?
No, that's fine. That's great. I just like watching penalties in the World Cup, isn't it?
I love the suggestion that planning board is as exciting as members, we now get to agenda item number 6. I move that in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 the Local Government Act 1952, stated in public interest that the public request be excluded from the remaining agenda items on the grounds that it may involve likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A of the Act.
Seconded by Councillor Hill.
Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much.